Yeah. Welcome to the Glow Interviews. My name is Katie Oman and I am an author, psychic, motivational speaker and coach. The Glow Interviews is a place where we can meet some really amazing and talented people who are a light in the darkness. I know that through talking with them, we'll all be left feeling empowered, inspired and hopeful of a brighter tomorrow. All of the contact details for both myself and my featured guests are in the description box below. So if you'd like to reach out to either of us for anything, then please feel free to do so. Today's guest is writer, mentor, speaker, alchemy trainer and adventurer, Colm Holland.
Hi, Katie.
Hi, Colm. Starting off working for a publishing company in Australia, it was there that he was introduced to the phenomenal book, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Working with him, Colm has become a master alchemist and has gone on to share all he's learned in his book, The Secret of the Alchemist. As well as hosting his own podcast, The Alchemy Lab, where Colm was kind enough to have me on as a guest. Thank you very much. Colm is very wise and a beautiful soul who I'm sure you'll find as fascinating as I do. So, welcome Colm and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Katie. Thanks for having me.
Bless you. So, first questions first. I'm asking everybody this because we can't get away from it.
Okay.
2020 has been probably the craziest year in living memory. So how have you been coping and have you been able to find any blessings in this chaos that we're living through?
My life has been, I've had more blessings in 2020 than any other year of my entire life.
Wow.
I guess it happened because I released my book this year. Yeah. So for those who aren't sure what it is, The Secret of the Alchemist.
Yes.
I released it this year. And the moment it was released, two amazing things happened. And I will keep it brief because I know we've only got about half an hour. But we put out a press release the day after the book was published on Amazon. And within 8 hours, I got a full feature in the Daily Mail in the UK online.
Wow.
Pages of it.
Wow.
With the whole story about how I met and how Paulo Coelho accredited me with the success of his book, or one of the people who helped his book become a multi-million copy bestseller. And then within 12 hours of publication, because of the Daily Mail article, I got a message from my son, actually, 5 o'clock in the morning, saying Paulo Coelho has retweeted and reposted on Facebook the Daily Mail article, saying this is amazing, this is fantastic. So that was the beginning of, that was right in the middle of lockdown.
Yeah.
The plan I had, if you looked at my calendar a year ago, was that August, September, October, Colm Holland was going to be touring bookshops all around the UK. And then come November, December, January, he was going to be in the USA. And we had all these different bookshops lined up and I had all these speaking engagements lined up. Gone.
Yeah, yeah.
However, what's amazing, and this has been the greatest blessing to me, is I have met so many amazing people since my book was published who have reached out to me, people like you, Katie. You're an amazing person, by the way. I count you on the list.
Thank you.
Who've come back to me and said, your book, Colm, your book, this is exactly what I believe. Thank you so much for writing it. Oh, and by the way, can you help me with this? And by the way, can you help me with that? Which is the alchemy work that I do. So actually, the sad bit is that I haven't been able to spend anywhere near the time that I would normally spend with my family. I've got 2 kids with families. Normally we would have been on holiday together. We would have done all sorts of things together. We haven't been able to do that this year. But so that's been the sad thing. And I am reminded, I know this is no real consolation, but I am reminded that the other day, that just came to me actually, that both of my grandfathers spent 4 years of their life up to their neck in mud and bullets, literally, in the fields of Flanders during the First World War.
Yeah.
And when they got home, many of them lost so many members of their neighborhoods and families to the flu. They went through, we think we go through hard times, but then when I think about, and then in the Second World War, both of my mother and father's homes were completely bombed. They lost everything. They lost friends. They were on the poverty line because they had nothing as a result. So, I know counting one's blessings is always good at any time, but even in the midst of this, what we feel is a crazy time compared to, my previous generations in my family, I'm not suffering at all, really.
No, absolutely.
Still in the comfort of my office, and I'm not. My life isn't under threat apart from unless I behave, foolishly. So.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, it's been very difficult for lots of people. I do try and count my blessings, but I also tell people that it's okay to not be okay. That
Sure.
thing of like toxic positivity can be just as bad as kind of falling into negativity. So you have to just kind of allow yourself to be where you're at from moment to moment.
Absolutely, embrace it, it, because that's a potential transformational moment.
Yeah.
Right there, that embracing of how you really feel. And I suppose that's what the theme of my book is about, is the day I decided to embrace who I actually believed I was, which wasn't that great at the time.
No, because for those who haven't met Colm before, I would say you worked in a publishing company, and then so was it difficult to make that switch to follow your dreams? And I know I'm going to talk to you about Alchemy in a second, but was it difficult just in a very tangible, logistical way to make the switch to actually go for it, as it were?
Yeah. So just a really quick background, and I won't labor it because the story's in my book. If you want the full story, you can read it in my book. But I had been on a spiritual journey from the age of 18. I had an encounter with what I have ended up calling unconditional love at the age of 18. And I had been on a fairly deep, quite intense spiritual journey in my early 20s, early 30s. And then I branched out and decided I was going to conquer the world, and went into publishing and ended up in a reasonably senior position within one of the largest publishing companies in the world, based in Sydney, Australia, HarperCollins in Sydney. And I I guess I'd reached a point in my life where I'd been successful. But if I started to listen to my heart, I was still really discontent. There was a deep hum of discontent still buzzing around, and I couldn't pin it down. I didn't have enough awareness, even though I'd done quite a lot of transformational and spiritual work through my life. And it was at that moment that I bumped into Paulo Coelho. Literally, on a Friday afternoon, the post boy in the office came into my office and dumped unceremoniously a large envelope of manuscripts, because we didn't have email in those days. This was 1993, by the way. And I opened it, and out fell, I know we're on video, so I'll show it, out fell this cover of this book this was the original cover of The Alchemist.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, that's amazing. And I took the book home and read it cover to cover, and then the rest is history. I told my publishing company that I thought this was going to be a global bestseller. And then I later discovered from Paulo himself that I actually was the first person in the business to believe what he believed, which is it was going to change millions and millions and millions of lives. So that's the point I reached. Paulo said, I want to thank you for that gift of my enthusiasm. And he said, so I've asked God what to give you. And I thought, well, this will be interesting. Maybe he's going to give me a nice gold watch or something. Oh, here's a check for $500,000 or something. No, he said, I asked God what I should give you. And God told me that I should spend a day of my time, his time, doing his alchemy magic just for me. And I have to say that at the time I placed no value on that at all.
Yeah.
It was a shock to have somebody say that to me,
Mm.
but I was in that place of almost complacence, almost prepared to give up, not believe in my dream, as you say,
Yeah.
not move forward, don't take any more risks. You've taken enough risks in life already. You know, enough is enough. And yet, the one thing he said was that, so now, Colm, all you need to do is to decide what you want, and it will happen because I've fixed it, basically, in the universe for you. I've fixed it. I don't know what I think of this at all. And eventually, stuff began to happen.
Mm.
Magic began to happen. And the first thing that happened was somewhere out of nowhere, even though for years I'd lived with it, I was able to go back and listen to that voice of discontent in my heart. And out of somewhere, I've actually plucked up the courage to risk again and step out. So I left what was a very lucrative role in a publishing company to start my own business, which became very successful. We were the leaders in our business, in our industry, in the whole of Australia at the time. We were heavily involved with the 2000 Olympics and all sorts of other things. It was a digital agency. And then I would look back at what I'd been like before and how fearful I had been prior to meeting Paolo, it became obvious to me that something in that statement that he made, that he spent a day of his time working for me, had substance. There was something in there I didn't understand. I didn't know how it worked. I had no idea what he actually did for a day. So I decided to study it, and that's the reason for my book. I'm basically telling the world this is what I discovered from that encounter.
Wow. So for all those who may not be familiar with the term alchemy or may have a vague idea of what it is, what's your understanding of it, and how can we use it in our own lives to kind of follow our own dreams?
Yeah. So alchemy is almost the original understanding as it was held right up until probably the 18th century in the world, the age of reason, first of all, the Reformation, and then the age of enlightenment and science and all of that, destroyed what was a very well embedded and a very important part of cultural life. Queen Elizabeth I had her own alchemist.
Wow.
Permanent. Paid for. She was his patron in one of the castles. And she wouldn't do anything. Elizabeth I of England would not do anything without consulting this guy. And if you Google it, you can read all about it. I won't labor the point here. And but what was interesting is that alchemy is like a liquid. It has this amazing ability to morph, because it didn't go away. It just morphed. So where did it morph? Where did it go? So it became many of the people who were the founders of modern science, like Sir Isaac Newton, for example, and the founders of modern psychology, like Carl Jung, for example. All these guys were students of alchemy.
Right.
It's just they didn't broadcast the fact, but they were reading books on alchemy. They were studying alchemy from not the most recent forms of alchemy, such as was going on in the Elizabethan period, but much further back. So alchemy has been around since early Egyptian times, so 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. And it grew out of part of their mythology and their deities and their gods and their worldview. And it was this concept that, and if you want me to sum alchemy up, this is it. It's a concept. It's a view of the world that says all things can transform from being worthless into worthy, from not respected into completely respected, from lead into gold. And they call that transmutation. And that is the core philosophy. And we've adopted that into modern psychiatry. So
Yeah.
Carl Jung, for example, his whole principle, those of you who've read any Jungian psychoanalysis will know that he talked about individuation as a process. And it's not about, and this is the other thing about alchemy, it's not about becoming something else or becoming a different person, or I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I want to become a better version of me."
Yeah.
That's actually impossible, by the way. Good luck to those of you who have tried it. I tried that for a while. That didn't work. What it is, it's becoming the true you.
Yeah, absolutely.
The real you,
Mm.
which is an inward journey, which is not about trying to copy some guru. It's not about trying to become like a mentor in any way. It's actually about going in and discovering the true self. And in there, of course, what we discover are things that we despise, that are wounded, that need healing, that are in pain. It's a bit of a mess down there, usually in the unconscious, as I call it, down there in the dark night of the soul.
Yeah.
But alchemy believed that there was a force, and those who study alchemy would discover that there is this force in the universe that we're all connected to. They called it prima materia, but actually I've renamed it because it has a character, unconditional love. So that is at the heart of alchemy, in my understanding of alchemy, and that has a power. It has a transformative quality that can take the most wounded, the most despised parts of our inner self and turn them into our greatest treasure. And those of you who don't know the story of The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, in case people aren't sure, that's the one. Yes, that's the book. Oh yeah, I've seen that book. Yeah, that's the book. This is a fable. This is not a self-help book. This is a fable of a young man who goes on a journey to the pyramids to find his treasure. It's a story of transformation.
Yeah.
It's a metaphor for the Jungian in a journey to find the true self. So once you realize that, and I discovered it, I thought, well, that's all well and good, but what is the process? How do you do this? And so my studies led me to realize that ancient alchemy owned a process. And if we are prepared to follow that process, it can be a real help.
Yeah.
It's not the solution. The solution is unconditional love, but alchemy itself is really just a pointer towards that.
Yeah, it's fascinating because that's like people do it without probably even realizing what it is that they're doing and what they're working with. But once you have greater awareness, then you can use it to your benefit in a more kind of concise way, can't you? That's the whole point.
The aim, anybody who's really on a true journey of transformation, what is it we're aiming for? Okay, it is discovering the true self, but why? Why bother? Why should we put all this energy, time and energy and effort and heartache and pain and revisiting wounds and things we'd rather forget? Why would we bother with that? Well, my own life experience taught me that if I want to live life to the full, to know real joy and fulfillment even in the very depths of my own psyche, then I needed help to do that, because what I discovered was the most fulfilled life that we can live is to love other people unconditionally. And it is almost a state of bliss.
Yeah.
But to get to that point is usually really hard. There are lots and lots of reasons why we can't do that or why we struggle to do that. And what I discovered was that by allowing unconditional love to permeate all of those areas of my own unconscious and to heal, that we can in turn, through our vulnerability, I hasten to add, not through our completeness, but through our vulnerability, we can also enter into that place where we can love other people as we love ourselves. I mean, Jesus said, I'm not suggesting that we should all be, follow Jesus. But one of the things that he did say, which I really value, is that, I'm only going to give you one important thing that you need to do in life, he said, and that is, can you please love each other in the same way as that I've loved you?
Yeah.
If you could do that, then you've pretty well got, sums it all up. And all the great religions at some point teach, that's what they all teach. So that's
absolutely. I always say that in life there's only ever two choices. You're either moving towards fear or you're moving towards love in everything that you do, and love is always the answer. But like you say, fear, the problem with fear is it's so loud and it's so dominant and it saturates every part of the society that we live in, so it's your default setting. So it's not that love is impossible, it's just like you say, it's a process. It can be difficult, you have to work through things, but it is worth the journey. That's kind of the bottom line, isn't it, really?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. And I'm not going to spoil the story for you of the original Alchemist, but it does have a happy ending.
Yes, it does. It's one of my favourites, actually. So yes, it does. It's a wonderful book. If you haven't read it, go get it. Get Colm's book because they're wonderful.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So what advice would you give to all those people who do feel a bit lost, a bit in the darkness right now?
Embrace it. Absolutely. It's a gift. Some people haven't needed this to embrace it, but if this is what it's taken to feel alone, to feel in the darkness, embrace it. And as you embrace it, then there are 2 or 3 really important lessons that I teach in my book. First of all, get help.
Yeah.
Go to Katie. Talk to Katie. She's, I don't know which way. Am I pointing the right way?
That way.
That way. Yeah. Go, talk to Katie. Talk to whoever you know, who you feel that you can share what you're feeling. And instantly, I know a lot of people are going to respond and say, oh gosh, that's going to make me feel so vulnerable. And that is the gift of what you're feeling. It's the gift of vulnerability.
Yeah.
I said I'm writing a course, by the way. I'm actually writing a course in alchemy transformation.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. I can't believe I set myself these ridiculous tasks. It's going to take me ages, but I'm stuck in it. I'm really head down in it at the moment. And one of the things that I say in there, which is really important, is that, do you want to know where love actually lives? It lives within the vacuum that we leave within ourselves when we make ourselves vulnerable. When we feel exposed, when we feel unprotected, when we feel defenseless, that opens the door for love not to come in, but for love to come out.
Yeah.
So I'm quite a Buddhist at that point. I believe in the lotus. The lotus flower opens, and that's where the love is. And I think they're right. So vulnerability is the home of love.
Yeah.
And this is one of the paradoxes of alchemy, is that if you want to be powerful, then guess what? You've got to become vulnerable. And then you've got to stay vulnerable, which is just as hard as becoming vulnerable in the first.
Yeah.
So get help, acknowledge, accept, and then get the help of other people, but also call. If you've never done it, try it. It can't do you any harm. Call on unconditional love, as an entity, because it forgives. Well, it doesn't even need to forgive. It accepts. It doesn't judge. It has full mercy and compassion. It shares our joy. It shares our sorrow, and it will reveal, a light will come on in that darkness that we maybe feel that we're in. So that would be my first of all, and then see where it goes. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, we've all been there. Many of us have been through tragedy and trauma and heartache, and if you say it's your greatest pain that can be your greatest strength, but it's embracing that rather than kind of denying it and running away from it. It's to say, okay, I'm here, this is where I'm at in my life, so how are we going to use this? How are we going to use this to move forward in a constructive way? Because I do believe everything happens for a reason. I really do.
Yes. But I am going to put another
Of course you
thought
are.
in there, and that is that we can take control of our life.
Yes.
One of the saddest things that I experience when talking to people is that there is this sense of fate, that I just have to, roll over and take whatever's thrown at me. I used to think that way. I actually don't personally. In my life, I don't think that way. I actually, as you said earlier, really importantly, we do have choices.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once we allow love to come into those vulnerable parts of our lives, what you'll discover is that you have the power of choice is even greater than it used to be, because it's really easy to be driven by emotions, by feelings, by other people's opinions, by our peer group, by whatever, to be pulled this way and that way, to the point that we actually feel we have no real control over even what we think, let alone how we behave and what we do. Well, you actually do have the choice. And true empowerment, which is, as I say in my book, the final real goal, this is the philosopher's stone, if you like, of the alchemist, is this power. Well, that power includes the ability to change things. And I'll go even further, and I'll probably lose loads of listeners' sympathies at this point. I'll go even further, to the point where we can actually perform miracles or magic, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter what we call it, but it's that we can become agents of change within ourselves, within our immediate relationships, within the immediate direction of our life. We might be heading off, may feel uncontrollably down this road. Guess what? What you may discover is that suddenly you've got the power to say, well, no, actually, no, I'm not going to go down that road. I'm going to go over there instead. Let's go this way. And that's called, in the story of the alchemist, that's called our true destiny. And Paulo Coelho in the story says something really important right at the beginning of the book, that Santiago is told by this character called Melchizedek. And those of you who know your Old Testament will have heard of Melchizedek. He says to to Santiago, there are two things you need to know. First of all, that the greatest lie in the world is that we have no control over our own lives. That's a lie. It's not true. It's just not true. And yet so many of us believe it. And so many of our belief systems include that. And the second thing is that you do have this journey available to you called your true destiny, your personal legend. It's become, is the phrase that's been coined off the back of that. Because the word destiny does still have a bit of a ring of fate about it. But this is nothing to do with fate at all. And what he says is that very early on in our life, when we are young, we have dreams, we have ambitions, we have hopes. We want to be an astronaut, want to be whatever. I want to be a ballet dancer. I want to be a pop star. Whatever.
I could just see you in a tutu, Colm, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Whatever. It doesn't matter. It's not so much the dream, the nature of the dream. It's the fact that the human spirit has an aspiration to achieve a purpose, to be fulfilled in a desire. And that's what a dream means in The Alchemist. And we bury it. Quite often, the older and the older and the older we get, life, you hear it. So many people say, oh, my life's just taken over, and there's no way I've given up dreaming, I've given up hoping, I've given up whatever. Well, Alchemy says it's never too late. And sometimes, if we've been on a fairly long journey of transformation and we're at that point where we're possibly giving up, like I was at the age of 40, I was just about to give up on thinking, I've got nowhere to go. This is it. I felt stuck. So if anybody is listening who feels stuck, whatever that looks like to you, the story of the alchemist is that an alchemist will come to you if you want it, and will give you the assistance that you need to pull you out of that mud of stuckness, and give you the vision to carry on. Because the key to the whole thing is that you actually do own the power to do that yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. But sometimes we need a bit of help to remember that, I think.
I've got one of these here, the file. I think we need somebody to come along and put one of those underneath us.
Yeah.
Go, come on, you can do this.
Yeah.
So why
Absolutely.
give up now? You've come all this way. You've spent all this time. Why stop? Because if you stop, it may be too late. You may never get this opportunity again. So if in my life, I'm always open. I've learned hard way. I'm open to the voice of love, which lives in the heart. So the other thing about being an alchemist and the story of the alchemist is that within our heart, which is a symbol for the unconscious, everything we need to know for our own destiny and for our own power and our own future lives already within us.
Yeah.
We just forgotten how to listen to it, mostly, in my experience. So, I'm regularly, wake up.
Sometimes
Colm.
you do have to go and have a word with yourself in the mirror and be like,
yeah, wake up, cold water, bucket of cold water or something, wake up, listen. What are you hearing? Are you really still following your heart, or have you gone off on some tangent somewhere? Because that's a dead end.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you could time travel back in a DeLorean to your younger self, what would you say if you had the opportunity to have that conversation?
Am I able to choose the age?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, I'm 3 years old, and my mother has locked me in the cupboard, which she did, and she's not well, and that's why I'm in the cupboard. I would say, don't go into fear. I would say to him, hang in there, because love is there with you, actually, and don't ever allow the circumstances that are happening to you let go of the fact that you are loved and cherished for who you are. So that it's pretty deep and meaningful, but that's the only thing that I would say to a younger version of myself if I could go back in time. Just hang in there, because it's all going to be okay as long as you look to love. And I'm very fortunate that my life did turn out in a way that I was able to eventually reconnect with that toddler me and have that conversation, but it didn't really happen until I was into my late 20s. I wish I'd been able to do it earlier. That's all.
Yeah. Bless you, bless you. So today, this moment in your life, who or what inspires you now to be your best self?
My wife, actually, yes. She's my litmus test. She's my grounder. She brings me down to earth, whenever I need. Yes, no, she inspires me amazingly. She's a terrific, amazing artist. This is the cover of my book. That's what she did.
Cool.
Our home is full of all her artwork, and she's extremely creative. So yes, and my kids and my grandkids, actually. If you read my book, I mentioned my grandson and how he's brought me many important lessons in my life at the right time. So I'm very blessed to have such amazing people who are giving me unconditional love all the time and putting up with me.
No, I'm sure it's not that difficult for you.
I'm sure. No, yeah.
So what's been the hardest lesson that you've been through so far in your journey, and what did it teach you? I'm
going to quote the very, very, very first sentence from my book. So the hardest lesson was to believe, as I say here, the hardest lesson that I ever had to learn was to believe that at the very core of my heart, that I'm loved unconditionally just for who I am, and not for what I can do.
Yeah.
That's the core and center of everything that guides me. Every day I find I have to remind myself that I'm just loved for who I am,
Yeah.
by love. And then when you believe that, when you are able to accept that, when you look around you, you realize how loved you really are, actually, in so many different ways, and we're almost blind to it. It's like we've got blinkers
Yeah.
on love. So bringing unconditional love to make it a front and center of my psyche, so that I think about that more than anything else, has been hard work, but that's what pays the dividend and the results.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything else I believe in that has benefited me more than that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's something that definitely I've struggled with. I'm sure many people do as well, but it's like an ongoing journey, isn't it? You have to keep coming, you have to bring yourself back. So every time you kind of stray off into that fear energy, it's like, no, you're okay. You know, you're wonderful and you're loved and you're amazing just for being you. You don't have to prove it. You know, you don't have to do something amazing to be worthy.
Yes. I vaguely heard the other day, I was listening to Radio 4 just while I was doing some cooking, and it said, Yusuf Cat Stevens is going to be on Desert Island Discs on Radio 4. Those of you who are old enough to remember who Yusuf Cat Stevens is, from my generation, he was one of the top pop stars. He was right up there with the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and everybody else. And of course, he converted to Sufism. He became a Muslim, and didn't write any more songs for years now. But he's back. He comes back every now and again with music, and he was on Desert Island Discs. So I actually yesterday I decided, I listened to it. He's 72 or something now. I'd love to hear what he's got to say about life. And one of the things that he said, which was just a great reminder, not as if I needed reminding, but it's just lovely to hear him say it. He said the first thing he had to learn to do was to fall in love with himself. And I'd never really heard it explained as in a romantic sense, sort of falling in love with.
Yeah, yeah.
And I loved that. And I thought, yeah, he's right, actually. If we can't say that, then that's something we need to look at, because it's really hard to love other people unless you love yourself unconditionally. Yeah,
definitely, because people are just your mirror. So if you are suffering from, you know, difficult relationships and very painful, and you keep getting hurt, you need to look at the relationship you have with yourself. And, you know, there's something that I've written about. It's something that's been my lesson. It's not an easy one, because it requires you to kind of really look at yourself. But once you start that process and start to kind of move into that space, that's where I believe true happiness lies. I really do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
So last question, my darling, for you. It's a nice one to finish on. So I've called these interviews the Glow interviews because I wanted to bring some light to the darkness. So in that vein, what lights you up? What brings you joy in your life?
Seeing the world afresh every day. I try and connect every day with the universe in some way, whether it's feeding the birds in the garden. I love boats and things, so going out on the river, just seeing my grandkids growing up, at night, seeing the moon. I know that sounds really simple. Watching the sunset, watching the sunrise, admiring trees, digging the allotment, connecting and realizing that we're all part of this whole thing called life. We're all in it together, and we're all part of it together, and we have the ability to either nourish that. The Alchemist calls it the soul of the world. We either have the ability to nourish that, or we have the ability, or we can choose to diminish it. And that all comes from within ourselves. So any way that I can be nourished and nourish the world and take care of it and hopefully preserve it for future generations. That's what brings me joy. Yeah.
That's beautiful. It's such a lovely thing to finish on. So thank you so much, Colm. I love this. Honestly, it's been fascinating, and I hope everyone watching has really, it's opened their minds, it's opened their hearts, it's made them stop and think a little bit. And if we've managed to do that, then I'm happy. It's been a real blessing. So thank you, honestly.
Thank you, Katie. Thanks for this podcast. Thank you for all that you're doing and all that you do in your ministry. Thank you.
Bless
Fantastic.
you, bless you. If
Thank
you want to find out more about Colm and his amazing book, like I say, all the links will be down here, so go and check them out. But apart from that, guys, we send you both lots and lots of love. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.